The great hall of the Velthury Tribunal stretched upward into darkness. Columns of black stone rose like the bones of some ancient beast, and pale blue lights floated in the air without any visible source. Commander Marcus Vance stood alone in the center of the floor, feeling very small and very human dot around him. Seated on platforms that circled the room like the rings of a planet, the Velthury watched. They were tall beings, almost 8 feet in height, with skin the color of old milk and bones that showed through their flesh like crystal. Their eyes had no pupils, just flat surfaces of silver that reflected everything and revealed nothing. Marcus had served in the Earth Coalition Navy for 15 years. He had fought pirates in the asteroid belts, survived the border wars with the Kithany Collective, and once spent 3 weeks floating in a damaged escape pod waiting for rescue. He had thought he knew what fear felt like. He had been wrong. The Velthury had ruled 12 star systems for 10,000 years. They did not conquer through war alone. They conquered through patience. They studied their enemies for centuries, learned every weakness, and then simply absorbed them into their empire like a body absorbing food. Humanity had encountered them only 80 years ago, and already humans served throughout Velthury space as soldiers, workers, and servants. The High Arbiter sat on the tallest platform, directly across from Marcus. His robes were made of something that looked like frozen smoke, and when he spoke, his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You have requested audience with this tribunal," the Arbiter said. "You may speak your petition." Marcus took a breath. His throat was dry, but he kept his voice steady. "You have my wife, Dr. Elena Vance. She was taken from Research Station, Kepler 7, 3 weeks ago by your security forces. I want her back." A soft sound moved through the chamber. It might have been laughter, or it might have been something else entirely. The Velthury did not express emotions the way humans did. "The female scientist is held for crimes against the hegemony," the Arbiter said. "She accessed restricted information. She attempted to share this information with outside parties. The penalty for such actions is indefinite containment." Marcus knew all of this already. Elena had been studying the genetic code of dozens of species throughout Velthury space. She had found something strange, something that connected them all. And buried deep in human DNA, she had found markers that matched an ancient species the Velthury had destroyed thousands of years ago. A species they had tried to erase from history completely. "I am not asking you to forgive her crimes," Marcus said carefully. "I am asking you to transfer her punishment to me. Take me instead. Let her go." The Arbiter tilted his head slightly. The movement was slow and deliberate, like a machine processing new information. "An exchange of prisoners is not standard procedure. What makes you believe your value equals hers?" "It doesn't," Marcus admitted. "But I'm offering more than an exchange. I'm offering service. Permanent service. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. Just let her go." Another long silence. The floating lights seemed to pulse in the darkness above. "There is a procedure," the Arbiter said finally. "It has been performed on many species throughout our history. We call it the severing. It reshapes the mind. It removes the barriers that make soldiers hesitate, that make warriors question orders. Those who survive become perfect weapons." Marcus felt cold spread through his chest, but he did not look away. "And if I agree to this procedure, you will be deployed against our enemies. The Ashkari insurgency has caused difficulties in the outer territories. A human weapon, properly conditioned, might prove useful against them." The Arbiter paused. "Your mind will remain. Your memories will remain. But your will, your ability to choose, will belong to us. You will do whatever we command, feel whatever we wish you to feel, and you will never disobey. This is the cost." Marcus thought about Elena. He thought about the morning she had told him about her research. Her eyes bright with excitement, not knowing that her discovery would destroy everything they had built together. He thought about the last message she had managed to send him before they took her. Just 3 words. "I'm so sorry." He thought about living in a galaxy without her in it. "Done," he said. The word hung in the air. Around the chamber, the Volturi shifted on their platforms. Even their silver eyes seemed to widen slightly. "You do not wish to negotiate?" the Arbiter asked. "You do not wish to understand the full implications of what you are agreeing to?" "I understand perfectly," Marcus said. "You're going to take away everything that makes me who I am. You're going to turn me into a tool. And in exchange, Elena goes free. Those are the terms. I accept them. The procedure is extremely painful. Many do not survive it. I'll survive. You cannot know that." Marcus smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "You don't know humans very well. We're harder to kill than we look." The Arbiter studied him for a long moment. Then he raised one long, thin hand and made a gesture that Marcus did not recognize. "The petition is accepted," the Arbiter announced. "The female scientist will be released into stasis containment pending the successful completion of the severing. If the human survives and proves useful, she will be returned to human space. If he fails, she will remain our property indefinitely." "No," Marcus said, and his voice was sharp enough to make several Velthari turn their heads. "She goes free first, before the procedure. Or there's no deal. You are not in a position to make demands. Then there's no deal." Marcus crossed his arms. "I know what I'm worth to you. A human who volunteers for the severing is rare. A human with military training is rarer. You want me, so you'll do this my way, or you'll get nothing." The silence stretched on for what felt like hours. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Finally, the Arbiter nodded. "The female will be transported to neutral space within 1 standard day. You will be taken to the conditioning facility immediately. If you attempt to escape or resist, she will be recaptured and executed." "I won't run," Marcus said. "I gave you my word. Your word means nothing to us. It means everything to me." They came from then, 4 Velthari guards in armor that seemed to absorb the light around them. They put restraints on his wrists and led him out of the great hall, down corridors that twisted and turned in ways that made his head hurt. Marcus did not look back. He had made his choice. He had answered the only question that mattered. Could he rescue her? Yes. The cost was his soul, his freedom, everything he had ever been or hoped to be. But the answer was still yes, and that was enough. The conditioning facility was built into an asteroid that floated in the empty space between stars. There was no sun here, no planets, nothing but darkness and cold stone. Marcus thought it was a fitting place for what they were about to do to him. They put him in a cell first. The walls were smooth and gray, with no windows and no visible door. The ceiling glowed with a soft white light that never changed, never dimmed. He could not tell if it was day or night, or how many hours had passed since they brought him here. On the second day, they confirmed that Elena had been released. They showed him footage of her ship departing for neutral space, her face visible through the cockpit window. She looked tired and scared, but she was alive. She was free. Marcus watched the footage 17 times before they took it away. On the third day, the severing began. The first phase was sensory deprivation. They put him in a tank filled with warm liquid that matched his body temperature exactly. They covered his eyes and ears with devices that blocked all light and sound. They removed all sensation of touch, taste, and smell until Marcus floated in absolute nothingness. Time lost all meaning. He could not tell if minutes were passing or months. His mind began to create its own experiences, filling the emptiness with dreams and memories and fears. He saw his childhood home burning. He saw Elena dying in his arms. He saw himself as an old man, forgotten and alone. The Velthury technicians monitored his brain activity constantly. They expected this phase to last 3 standard days. Most subjects began showing signs of mental breakdown after 40 hours. Their minds could not handle the complete absence of input and began to tear themselves apart. Marcus lasted 7 days. When they finally pulled him out of the tank, he was thin and shaking, but his eyes were clear. The lead technician, a Velthury female named Sareth, made notes on a glowing tablet. "How did you maintain cognitive stability?" she asked. Her voice was flat, clinical. "I talked to myself," Marcus said through cracked lips. "Told myself stories. Recited every regulation I ever memorized in training. Counted prime numbers up to 10,000. He paused. "And I thought about my wife. Your emotional attachment should have made the isolation worse, not better. You don't understand love very well, do you?" Sareth did not answer. She simply made more notes and ordered the guards to take him to the second phase. The memory extraction room was cold and bright. They strapped Marcus to a metal table and attached dozens of thin wires to his skull. The wires connected to machines that hummed and clicked in the darkness beyond the lights. "This process will access your memories directly," Sareth explained. "We will examine each one, extract the emotional content, and use it to map your psychological vulnerabilities. The experience will be uncomfortable." Uncomfortable was not the right word. When the machines activated, Marcus felt like his brain was being pulled apart one thread at a time. Every memory he had ever formed was dragged to the surface, examined, and analyzed. They started with his childhood. His mother's face. His father's hands teaching him to fish. The first time he fell off a bicycle and scraped his knee. Each memory was pulled out of him like a splinter, being removed from deep under the skin. Then they moved to his military service. The first time he killed someone in combat. The face of a pirate captain who had begged for mercy before Marcus shot him. The sound of his best friend dying in his arms after a reactor explosion. And finally, they reached Elena. Their first meeting at a science conference on Earth. She had been presenting research on alien genetics, and he had been there as a security consultant. He remembered thinking she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, and also the smartest. He remembered being terrified to talk to her. Their first date. Their first kiss. The night he proposed to her on a balcony overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Their wedding day. When she had worn white flowers in her hair and smiled at him like he was the only person in the universe. The quiet mornings they spent together, drinking coffee and reading the news. The arguments they had and the way they always made up afterward. The last time he held her before she left for Kepler 7, not knowing it would be months before he saw her again. Each memory was extracted and examined. Each one hurt, but something strange happened. The technicians noticed it almost immediately. "His neural activity is increasing," one of them reported. "The extraction should be weakening his emotional centers, but they're growing stronger." Sareth leaned forward, studying the readings. How is this possible? Marcus could barely speak through the pain, but he managed a few words. "You're making me remember why I'm doing this. Every memory reminds me what I'm fighting for." They had designed the extraction to break subjects down by forcing them to relive their most powerful experiences. But for Marcus, those experiences were all connected to Elena, and thinking about Elena did not make him weaker. It made him stronger. The third phase was meant to sever his emotional attachments completely. They flooded his mind with false memories, simulations so real he could not tell them from truth. He watched Elena die 1,000 different ways. He watched her betray him, laugh at him, tell him she had never loved him. He watched her choose other men, abandon him, forget his name. After 3 days of this, Sareth entered his cell personally. She found Marcus sitting in the corner, his body covered in sweat, his hands shaking. "Why do you resist?" she asked. "The simulations are designed to break the bond between you and your mate. Why do you cling to something that causes you such pain?" Marcus looked up at her. His eyes were red from crying, but there was something hard behind them, something that had not been there before. "You want to know the secret?" he said. "Every soldier knows grief before it comes. We imagine the worst 1,000 times so that when it happens, we're ready. You're not showing me anything I haven't already dreamed about in my darkest moments." He stood up slowly, his legs unsteady but his spine straight. "You think love is a weakness because it causes pain. But the pain is what makes it strong. Every time you show me Elena dying, I remember why she was worth dying for. Every time you show me losing her, I remember why I chose to lose myself instead." Sareth studied him for a long moment. Then she turned and left without another word. The severing was designed to take 4 cycles. Each cycle was meant to destroy a different part of the subject's will, leaving behind an empty shell that could be programmed with new loyalties. After 6 cycles, the technicians requested guidance from the High Command. They had never seen anything like this before. The human's will had not broken dot, it had turned to iron. And somewhere deep in Marcus's mind, behind the pain and the exhaustion and the endless assault on everything he was, a plan was beginning to form. They wanted to make him into a weapon. They had no idea what kind of weapon they were creating. The Valkyrie High Command declared Marcus ready for deployment after 8 cycles of the severing. Their reports described him as successfully conditioned, his will subjugated, his loyalty absolute. They implanted neural devices directly into his brain, tiny machines that would monitor his thoughts and enforce obedience through pain if he ever tried to resist their commands. They gave him the rank of Strike Commander and assigned him to the Ashkari front. The Ashkari were a coalition of 12 species who had served the Valkyrie for thousands of years. They had built their ships, maintained their stations, and fought their wars. But 5 years ago, they had begun to demand something the Valkyrie had never offered to any servant race: freedom. The rebellion had started small. A few protests on distant colonies, some minor acts of sabotage. But it had grown quickly, spreading from system to system like a fire that could not be put out. Now, the Ashkari controlled 3 star systems entirely and were threatening 2 more. The Valkyrie had responded with typical patience. They studied their enemy, gathered intelligence, and planned their counterattack carefully. Their war algorithms predicted the conflict would last another 15 years before the rebellion was crushed. Marcus ended his first campaign in 3 weeks. The stronghold on Vera 7 was supposed to be impossible to take. The Ashkari had built it into the heart of a dead planet, surrounded by defense platforms and minefields, and the largest fleet they had ever assembled. Valkyrie strategists estimated it would require a siege of at least 6 months, with acceptable losses of approximately 40% of the attacking force. Marcus looked at their plan and threw it away. "This is wrong," he told the Valkyrie admiral who commanded the fleet. "You're trying to win cleanly. The Ashkari know your tactics. They've studied you for centuries. They know exactly what you're going to do." The admiral, a pale creature named Varth, looked at Marcus with cold silver eyes. "And what would you suggest, human?" "Attack directly. No siege, no blockade. Full assault on the main fortress, right through their defensive line. The losses would be catastrophic." "The losses would be heavy," Marcus corrected. "But we would win in hours instead of months. And the psychological impact would be enormous. The Ashkari believe you are predictable. Show them they are wrong." Varth considered this for a long moment. The neural implants in Marcus's head tingled, ready to deliver pain if the admiral decided his suggestion was insubordination. But Varth simply nodded. Very well. We will try your approach. The Battle of Vareth 7 lasted 3 hours and 17 minutes. Marcus led the assault personally, commanding a strike force of fast attack ships that punched through the Ashkari defensive line before they could respond. His tactics were nothing the Velthari war algorithms had ever predicted, because they were not Velthari tactics at all. They were human tactics. He accepted risks that no Velthari commander would consider. He sacrificed ships to create openings. He made decisions in seconds that Velthari strategists would have debated for hours. And when the Ashkari fleet commander finally realized what was happening, it was already too late. The last transmission from the Ashkari flagship came just before Marcus's forces destroyed it. The commander's voice was filled with something that might have been fear or might have been respect. "Your human fights like prey that is forgotten it can die," he said. Then the transmission ended, and the Battle of Vareth 7 was over. Marcus stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching the debris field spread across the darkness of space. The Velthari crew around him were silent, processing what they had just witnessed. None of their simulations had predicted this outcome. In the following months, Marcus was deployed to 3 more systems. Each time, the results were the same. He won battles that should have been impossible. He made decisions that violated every principle of Velthari military doctrine. And he won anyway. The High Command did not understand. Their neural implants showed that Marcus was obedient, that he followed orders without question. But there was something in his strategies that made them uncomfortable. Something unpredictable and dangerous. Sarath, the technician who had overseen his conditioning, was called before the High Arbiter to explain. "The implants are functioning correctly," she reported. "The human's loyalty is absolute. He does not resist our commands. Then why does he make us afraid?" The Arbiter asked. Sarath had no answer. The truth was something she had only begun to suspect, and she was not sure she believed it herself. The severing was designed to remove a subject's will, to strip away everything that made them an individual. But Marcus's will had not been removed. It had been driven underground, buried so deep that even the monitoring systems could not detect it. On the surface, he was a perfect weapon. Beneath the surface, he was something else entirely. He was waiting. Every battle he fought, every system he conquered, he was learning. The neural implants gave him access to the Velthari military network, and through that network, he could see everything. Ship movements, communication codes, security protocols, the location of every important facility in Velthari space, and the location of Elena. She was still in stasis, held in a facility on Velthar Prime itself. The Velthari had not released her after all. They had moved her to their homeworld as insurance, a guarantee of Marcus's continued cooperation. They thought he did not know. They were wrong. Marcus had known within 2 weeks of his deployment. A careless communication, a security report that mentioned her transfer, a single line of data that the Velthari assumed he would never see. But he saw everything now. The implants that were supposed to control him had become his greatest tool. He continued to fight their wars. He continued to win their battles. Each victory made them trust him more, gave him access to more systems, more information, more power. And with each passing week, the plan in his mind grew clearer. The Ashkari rebellion was not his enemy. The Velthari were his enemy. They had taken his wife, broken their promise, and tried to turn him into a slave. They thought they had succeeded. They had no idea that the weapon they had created was aimed directly at them. On the night before his final campaign, Marcus stood alone in his quarters and allowed himself to think about Elena for the first time in months. The implants could monitor his thoughts, but he had learned to hide certain things even from them. He had become very good at pretending to be empty when he was actually full of rage. "I'm coming for you," he whispered into the darkness. "Just hold on a little longer." The next morning, He received orders to lead the final assault on the Ashkari capital. It would be the largest battle of the war, the end of the rebellion, and the beginning of a new era of Velthari dominance. Marcus smiled as he read the orders. The Velthari thought they were sending him to crush their enemies. They were actually sending him exactly where he needed to be. The assault on the Ashkari capital was supposed to be the end of everything. 1,200 ships gathered in formation, the largest fleet the Velthari had assembled in 3 centuries. Every sensor and communication system in the sector was focused on this single point in space. Waiting for the final battle to begin, Don Marcus stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Judgment, surrounded by Velthari officers who had learned to respect and fear him in equal measure. His neural implants hummed quietly in his skull, monitoring his thoughts, ready to punish any hint of disobedience. But Marcus was not thinking about disobedience. He was thinking about timing. 6 months of careful preparation had led to this moment. 6 months of hidden communications, secret alliances, and dangerous gambles that could have killed him at any time. The Ashkari leadership knew he was coming. They knew what he was planning. And unlike the Velthari, they understood why. "Commander," his communications officer reported, "the fleet is in position, awaiting your order to attack." Marcus nodded slowly. He looked at the tactical display, watching the red dots that represented Ashkari ships, the blue dots that represented his own forces. For a moment, everything was still. Then he gave an order that changed the galaxy. "All ships, this is Commander Vance. Cease attack protocols. I repeat, cease attack protocols. We are not engaging the Ashkari today." Confusion rippled through the bridge. His first officer, a Velthari named Keleth, stepped forward with alarm in his silver eyes. "Commander, that order contradicts our mission parameters." The implants will do nothing," Marcus said. He reached up and tapped the side of his head. "I've been reprogramming them for 4 months. They think I'm following orders. They're wrong." Before Keleth could respond, Marcus pressed a button on his command console. Throughout the fleet, on every Velthari ship, the same message began to broadcast on every frequency. "This is Commander Marcus Vance, transmitting to all species in Velthari space. What you are about to receive is a data package containing classified information from the Velthari High Command. It includes evidence of genocide against 17 species over the past 8,000 years. It includes the locations of secret prison facilities where dissidents are held and tortured. It includes the genetic markers that prove humanity and dozens of other races are descended from the precursors, the species the Velthari exterminated to build their empire." He paused, letting the words sink in across 100 star systems. "The Velthari have lied to us all. They are not guardians. They are not protectors. They are parasites who have built their power on the bodies of those they have destroyed. This ends today." On the Ashkari side of the battle line, weapons powered down. The rebel fleet did not fire. They simply watched and waited. Keleth pulled a sidearm and pointed it at Marcus. "You have committed treason against the hegemony. The penalty is death." "Then shoot me," Marcus said calmly. "But the transmission has already been sent. Every ship in this fleet is broadcasting the data package right now. Every station in Velthari space is receiving it. In about 6 hours, every species you have ever conquered will know exactly what you are." He looked at Keleth with something that might have been pity. "Your empire is already dead. It just doesn't know it yet." Keleth did not shoot. His hand trembled, but he did not pull the trigger. Around the bridge, other Velthari officers stood frozen, unsure what to do. Their command structure had just been destroyed. Everything they believed about their place in the universe was crumbling around them. Marcus walked past them without fear. He had somewhere else to be. The shuttle he had prepared was waiting in the hangar bay. It was a small craft, fast and quiet, equipped with the highest level security codes in the Veltri network. Marcus had spent months collecting those codes, one piece at a time, hiding them in places where even the monitoring systems would not look. He flew alone to Velther Prime. The Citadel of Eternity was the most heavily guarded facility in the hegemony. It housed the stasis chambers of thousands of prisoners, enemies of the state who were too valuable to kill but too dangerous to release. Elena was there, in a pod on the 17th level, frozen in dreamless sleep. Marcus landed his shuttle in a maintenance bay on the outskirts of the Citadel. It walked through the corridors like a ghost, broadcasting override codes that opened every door, disabled every sensor, and blinded every guard. The security systems had been designed to keep enemies out. They had not been designed to stop someone with the access codes of a strike. Commander. He found Elena's stasis pod in a room filled with identical pods, each one containing a prisoner the Veltri wanted to forget. She looked exactly as he remembered her, frozen in the moment they had taken her. Her hair still had the slight curl she always complained about. Her hands were folded across her chest, as if she were simply sleeping. Marcus pressed the release sequence, and the pod began to cycle open. Warm air flowed out as the stasis field dissolved, and Elena's eyes fluttered. She took a gasping breath, the first she had taken in nearly a year. Marcus? Her voice was weak, confused. What? Where? I'm here, he said, taking her hand. I came for you, just like I promised. Behind him, he heard footsteps. The High Arbiter entered the chamber, his robes flowing around him like liquid shadow. His face showed something that might have been surprise or might have been anger. With the Veltri, it was always hard to tell. You cannot escape, the Arbiter said. Every ship, every gate, every system is controlled by the hegemony. You have nowhere to run. Marcus helped Elena to her feet. She leaned against him, still weak from the stasis, but her eyes were clearing rapidly. I'm not trying to escape, Marcus said. He turned to face the Arbiter, and there was something terrible in his smile. I'm broadcasting. Right now, at this very moment, every species in your network is receiving the same data I sent to the fleet. Every secret, every atrocity, every weakness in your command structure. The Arbiter's crystalline bones began to vibrate with rage. The sound was like glass breaking in slow motion. You will doom your species, the Arbiter said. We will hunt down every human in the galaxy. We will exterminate your kind like we exterminated the precursors. You'll try, Marcus agreed. But here's what you never understood about humans. He stepped forward, and something in his stance made the Arbiter take an involuntary step back. You asked me what I would pay for Elena's life. I said everything. You thought that meant my soul. You thought that meant my freedom, my will, my sense of self. He shook his head slowly. I meant your empire. The Arbiter stared at him. For the first time in perhaps 1,000 years, there was something like fear in those silver eyes. The data I'm transmitting includes everything. Ship positions, fleet movements, defense codes, the locations of every weapons depot, every supply line, every vulnerable point in your entire civilization. By tomorrow morning, 50 different species will be using that information to tear you apart. He took Elena's hand again. You spent 10,000 years building this empire. You thought you were gods, but you forgot something important. And what is that? The Arbiter asked. Marcus smiled, and it was not a kind expression. Gods don't bleed, and you're about to bleed a lot. He walked past the Arbiter without looking back. Elena leaned on his shoulder, still regaining her strength, but her grip on his hand was firm. Behind them, the Arbiter stood alone in the chamber full of stasis pods, surrounded by the frozen bodies of his enemies. And somewhere across the galaxy, the Veltri hegemony began to burn. The Veltri hegemony did not fall in a day. It took 11 years of coalition warfare as species that had been enemies for centuries joined together against their common oppressor. 11 years of uprisings as slave populations on 100 worlds rose up and demanded their freedom. 11 years of watching an empire that had stood for 10,000 years crumble into dust. Marcus saw only the first 3 years of it. The neural implants that had made his rebellion possible were never meant for human brains. The Valkyrie had designed them for their own physiology, for minds that were older and slower and more patient than anything humanity had ever produced. When Marcus had reprogrammed them to hide his true thoughts, he had pushed them beyond their limits. The damage began slowly. Headaches at first, then moments of confusion. He would forget words, lose track of conversations, wake up not knowing where he was. Elena noticed before he did. She was a scientist, after all. She understood what was happening even when he refused to admit it. The implants are degrading your neural tissue, she told him one night, a voice steady even though her eyes were wet with tears. Every time you use them against the Valkyrie, every time you hid your thoughts from their monitoring systems, you were burning out parts of your own brain. Marcus took her hand. They were on a small station in neutral space, watching through the viewport as ships from a dozen different species gathered for another campaign against the hegemony. He had become something of a legend to the rebellion. The human who broke the empire. The weapon that turned. He had never wanted to be a legend. He had only wanted to save his wife. "How long do I have?" he asked. Elena did not answer for a long moment. Then she leaned her head against his shoulder and closed her eyes. "I don't know. Months, maybe. A year if we're lucky." She paused. "If you stop using the implants entirely, we might be able to slow the damage. We might buy more time. But then I won't be useful anymore. I won't be able to access Valkyrie systems, coordinate attacks, lead fleets." He shook his head. "The rebellion still needs me. I need you more." He looked down at her. This woman he had given everything for. She was older now, her hair streaked with gray, her face lined with worry and exhaustion. But she was still the most beautiful person he had ever seen. "I love you," he said. "You know that, right? Everything I did, everything I gave up, it was all for you." "I know." She lifted her head and met his eyes. "That's what makes this so hard. You saved me, Marcus. But you didn't save yourself." Over the following months, they traveled together through the expanding territory of the Free Coalition. Elena worked with scientists from 100 different species, sharing the research that had started everything, the genetic evidence that proved the Valkyrie had built their empire on lies. Marcus did what he could to help, but his condition worsened steadily. First, he lost his memories of the war. The battles blurred together, names and dates fading like old photographs. Then he started forgetting earlier things. His mother's face, his father's voice. The name of the first ship he had served on. Elena wrote everything down for him. She filled notebooks with stories of their life together, hoping that even if he forgot, he could still read and remember. She stayed by his side every moment, even when he no longer recognized her face. The Valkyrie hegemony fell on a cold morning in the 11th year of the war. The last fortress on Valkyr Prime surrendered to a coalition fleet led by Ashkari commanders who had once been slaves. The High Arbiter was captured and put on trial for crimes against galactic civilization. The stasis chambers in the Citadel of Eternity were opened, and thousands of prisoners finally went home. Marcus did not see any of this. By then, his world had shrunk to a single room on a station orbiting what had once been the heart of an empire. Elena sat beside his bed, holding his hand. He was thin now, his hair white, his eyes unfocused. The doctor said he had days left, maybe hours. The neural implants had finally consumed everything they could take. "Marcus," she said softly, "can you hear me?" He turned his head toward her voice. For a moment, something cleared in his eyes. As she saw the man she had married, the soldier who had walked into the heart of an empire and torn it apart with nothing but love and rage. "Elena," he whispered. Her name. He still remembered her name. "I'm here. Did I do it? Did I save you?" She squeezed his hand, tears running down her cheeks. "Yes, you saved me. You saved everyone." He shook his head slowly, the movement barely visible. "No, not everyone." His voice was so quiet she had to lean close to hear him. "Just you. Everyone else was just the cost." She did not know what to say to that, so she simply held his hand and stayed with him, just as she had stayed with him through everything else. He died an hour later. As the sun rose over the ruins of the Velthury capital below, the galaxy remembered Commander Marcus Vance as a liberator, a legend, the human who broke an empire. They built statues of him on 100 worlds. They named ships after him, stations, entire star systems. Children learned his story in schools, and soldiers whispered his name before battle. But Alana remembered him differently. She remembered a man who had stood before the most powerful beings in the galaxy and asked one simple question: "Can I rescue her?" She remembered a man who had endured torture, isolation, and the destruction of his own mind because the alternative was losing the woman he loved. She remembered a man who had paid the highest price imaginable, not for glory or power or the freedom of the galaxy, but for her. Just for her. Years later, when people asked Elena about her husband, about the legendary Commander Vance, she would smile sadly and shake her head. "You don't understand," she would say. "He wasn't fighting for the galaxy. He wasn't even fighting for freedom. He was fighting for me. The rest of it, the war, the empire falling, the liberation of 100 species, that was all just collateral." They never understood. They could not understand. The Velthury had been right about one thing in the end. Humans were primitive. They loved without calculation. They sacrificed without logic. They would burn down empires for a single person, tear apart civilizations for a touch or a kiss or a memory. And that was what made them terrifying. Elena lived for another 30 years after Marcus died. She continued her research, helped rebuild the worlds the Velthury had destroyed, and watched as a new era of galactic cooperation slowly replaced the old order of domination and fear. But every night, before she slept, she would read from the notebooks she had kept during Marcus's final months. The stories of their life together. The memories he had lost. The love that had cost him everything. And every night, she would whisper the same words into the darkness. "Thank you. Thank you for saving me." In the silence that followed, she could almost hear his voice answering back, "Just for you. Always just for you."